Hello and welcome to Romantic Readers Podcast. My name is Nicole and I am joined by one of our special guests that we had on previously from Bookish is Better. Welcome to Karly, who is our fourth wing Onyx Storm expert. We wanted to get her along again to talk about, obviously, Onyx Storm, who taken the world by storm. We wanted to bring her along and I guess just have a conversation again. So how are you going, Karly?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So you have to tell me, Onyx Storm, I know you were excited. How did you go? What was your experience of getting your hands on this book? And tell me the story.
So since I've seen you guys last, I merged my podcast with the Dear Fantasy Reader podcast.
Well done.
So it's all three of us now, and we were all reading it and like texting each other as we were reading it because we're all over the place, and we're all over the country, as I should
Yeah.
say. We're all in different time zones, and
Oh
so we're
no,
like
that's really
texting.
hard.
Yeah. And we were texting each other as we were reading, so even though we were each we were reading individually, it felt kinda like a group buddy read, which was really fun.
Yeah.
But I read it really quickly. I think I read it in, like, 2 days or 2.5 days
Wow.
because
Oh
I
my.
was so worried about spoilers because they were already out.
Yes, people got copies early from
Mhm.
Target, I think, and then I stayed far away from TikTok and
Yeah.
I was barely going on Instagram. I was very, very nervous too.
Yeah. I was so scared it was gonna be spoiled, so I read it really quickly. I don't suggest doing that for this book. It was a lot of information really fast.
I don't know.
Uh,
Did you even sleep? Because I was like reading till 1, 2 a.m. and then waking up at 6 a.m. to read again. And
yeah.
it still took me nearly 4 days, I think, to get through it.
Yeah, I think the first night I only slept 4 hours. I think I fell asleep around 3 and I woke up at 7 and immediately started reading. It was a fever dream of a read. It was it was not the suggested method, that's for sure. Don't do what I did. Um, but I still really enjoyed it. It was really fun. It was really, I felt like, intense compared
Mhm.
to the previous 2 books, more so for
Yes.
me anyways. I don't know about your experience. It was a much more intense feeling of reading.
Yeah, well, I did read it in a different way as well. I went to a midnight release party, which we never get here in
Mhm.
Australia, and I got a group of girlfriends together that we all love the books, and we hired a house that was literally next door to the bookstore, and we just for 2 nights we just read, and had no idea how that was going to go. If we were going to all disappear into our rooms and read, but what we all did was we basically sat around the lounge room, read our books, and then I tended to be the fastest, and I'd be like, and they'd be like, "What page? What page?" And then they would be like, "Okay, we're all going to stop and debrief in like 10 minutes." And it was so fun. We had the best time, and I think that amplified the excitement because when something would happen, like we'd find out a second signet or something like that, we would
Mhm.
all just lose our minds together. So it was a really exciting. I highly recommend to people. That's a really, really great way to experience reading one of these books. It really hypes up the excitement. But yes, it was almost somewhat a pressure cooker. We were dealing with a much shorter time frame, I think, compared to the other books. So it didn't have those slow moments that were constantly going from adventurous activity to it was very intense the whole way along, but also felt different, I think, to the other books. But yeah, what was your take on that?
I mean, I really liked it. It was what I expected though, because by the time Iron Flame ends, the war is basically started.
Yes.
And so the war basically starts at the end of Iron Flame, like truly starts. Like poor Emil has been kind of locked in this war, but the Venom essentially really ramped it up at the end of Iron
Yes.
Flame and made their presence known to everybody. And so I knew it would be very intense because we have all of these conflicts happening at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's definitely what I expected, and I really liked it. I wish I would have read it a little slower because I was like, by the end of that book, and I felt like, and it's funny because like when I talk to people who really liked the book and when I talk to people who didn't love the book as much, I feel like their reaction was the same, which is, "What the fuck just happened?" Like that was like,
Where have I been?
yeah, it was just a very intense. I'm like, I don't know what's happening anymore, and I'm like, I know it's a lot. There a lot happened in that book really quickly.
Yes.
It
Yes.
felt like a sprint, um, a little
Yes.
bit
Yeah,
more
yeah.
so.
Exactly, and I think a lot of things some things happened that I think we predicted. Like, there was I think a lot of us knew obviously, we knew that Xaden had become Venom, and we thought Violet's gonna be trying to find a cure. That was our theory, and I think even in our last podcast, we talked about them potentially going to the Isle Kingdoms, that was a
Mhm.
potential next step and, like, where they'd be going to try and find the cure and find out more about Andana. Did that hit the mark for you? Was that what you were expecting? And how did you feel about that whole journey of Violet and the quest squad going that way?
I mean, I definitely expected them to go to the Isles. I think just based on the blurb, I was like, they're gonna have to go to the Isles next because that's just what it sounded like it was setting up for me.
Mhm.
And I knew like she was gonna be hyper focused on curing Xaden, potentially too focused on curing Satan. But yeah, so like it was really what I expected, and I I have learned through talking to a lot of people about this book is that some people felt like that just like wasn't what they were where they expecting the book to go, and so I think for people who weren't expecting that, it just felt like just kind of out of nowhere, and I was like, well, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was expecting, and I was so ready to not be at Basgiath for a little bit. I was
Yes.
ready for a change of scenery and
Yeah.
something new, and so I really loved all of the island stuff because it
Yeah.
just kind of felt like we finally kind of got to really broaden this world more, which
Yes.
was really enjoyable, and I felt like the world felt just richer by the time this book was done.
Oh, definitely, definitely. As Rebecca has said, she really got ingrained into the world in this book, which I think was really, really easy to kind of see. And yeah, I
Mhm.
think that I think I was expecting them to go to the Isle Kingdoms and that, but I also I think prior to this book, my thought had been that it was going to be similar to Harry Potter, where you get a year at Basgiath each year. So I was
Mhm.
thinking we were going to be jumping into third year. Now, mind you, if you read the blurb, it says she's been there for 18 months. So as soon as you read that, you probably realize, oh, hang on. But of course, we didn't have that until we'd received the book. So my thought had been we'll be jumping into third year and we'll get that sort of year. And during that year, they'd be going off to go to the Isle Kingdoms and try and find a cure for Xaden. But we actually were dealing with a much shorter time frame and we were still in second year. So that did just change things a little bit with what we're
Mhm.
expecting. But I also felt like what we saw was really, really interesting and good. And there were so many Easter eggs that had been laid in Iron Flame that I felt like happened in
Mhm.
Onyx Storm, which for us, as I said, as a group, we were so excited with some of the things that we had theorized that then came true or came true but in a different way, that sort of thing. Was there any big parts of this book, like big surprises, Easter eggs that you went, oh my God, I predicted that? Or
I think the first one was that I remember reading it and I got really excited and I texted my co-host and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you guys need to let me know when you get to chapter 7." Cuz the chapter 7 epigraph was about Lyra and the wards
yeah,
and designing the wards in Orisha so that the flyers could also wield. And I had that as a theory and I was like I was convinced that Orishan wards would allow the Flyers to wield it. That wasn't a sign that they were failing, that they were failing, but that just wasn't a sign that they were
yes,
failing.
yes,
And so I was really excited when that was right, just because I knew that that meant that potentially that meant that the wards could all be designed so that
yeah,
all dragons and griffins could wield, which I think is probably what is needed to restore a little more balance because right now
absolutely.
things were just so weighted towards the dragons that
Yes.
it as far as this whole theme of nature likes everything in balance, I'm like, "Well, that's not really in balance."
Yeah, exactly.
Um, so I was really excited for that. I was really excited about the second signets because I
Yes.
was convinced the marked ones had second signets.
Yes, and that came true. And that felt like it was a bit of a stretch. Like, I was like,
Mhm,
"Would they really have second signets? Could that really be accurate?" There'd been that moment, in Fourth Wing where Liam had used, I think, the ice water signet, and
mhm.
Rebecca has said, "Oh no, that was just an error in editing, that sort of thing." But it was great to know that nope, nope, it was we do have second signets.
You know, I have heard that Rebecca said that somewhere that it was an editing error, and I can't find it anywhere. I have
Yeah.
I have searched through so many interviews, and I can't find it anywhere, so if anybody has it, please send it to me because I could never find that. That's what people kept telling me. They were like, "No, she already said this is wrong," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I can't find it." So
Yeah,
I
same. I haven't seen it either. I've just heard
yeah,
it from word of mouth.
yeah, I think it's one of those rumors that just maybe she said something sort of similar to that, and it just got twisted, and
Terrible.
that's what everything but I can't find it anywhere, and I I have listened to so many interviews at this point that I'm like, if somebody finds it, I will be shocked
Yes,
because I
yes.
have hours of interviews.
Yeah, exactly. If anyone's researched, it's you. So it's if you haven't found it, it's quite possibly not around or not easy to find, that's for sure. So if anyone has it, please send it our way so that
Yeah,
we can
please
see it
let
and
me
know
know. I would love to see that.
where it's located. So what did you think of, like, Garrick's second signet? And I mean,
I
I think I shared on the last one that my idea of what Violet's second signet was going to be distance wielding. I thought it was
mhm,
her, and so then when it was
mhm.
Garrick, I was so excited that distance wielding existed and someone had it. But no, my second signet theory did not come true, but it did come true for Garrick. So I was so happy.
I I also really wanted somebody to be a distance builder because I was like, "This is gonna be so cool to see," and I was so glad when we got to see it through Imogen's perspective.
Yes,
I thought that was really cool, like, her experience of it. I loved the reveal of it in that moment. I thought that was I loved how everything about that scene was written, and I wasn't leaning towards distance wielder, though, because Xaden has really been written that he won't lie to Violet. There's this whole thing where it's like he won't lie to her. He'll carefully craft answers to her so that he's still technically telling her the truth.
yes,
But he like outright lied to her about that and so unnecessarily in Iron
yeah,
Flame about how he's like, because she asks him if he's a distance wielder, and he's like, no, there hasn't been one in centuries. And I'm like, that was such an unnecessary lie because she wasn't asking if Garrick was a distance wielder. And so I just thought that was really interesting that he was written to kind of like just outright lie about that. And that's why I was leaning away from him being a distance wielder because I
yeah,
was like, he's just been written to be so carefully craft how he answers her questions
yeah,
that
yeah, absolutely.
I that really threw me. I didn't love that. I'm like, I really wanted him to be written more so that he, like, really carefully never ever technically lied to her.
Yes,
Um
yes, yes. Whereas even though you could say he's twisted the truth a little bit to say there hasn't
Mhm.
been one in hundreds of years, that
Yeah.
really yeah, yeah. No, that's
But
very
I
interesting.
but I do love that he is a distance wielder. I think it's super cool. I love it. I just thought it was funny because in this interview, somebody asked Rebecca Garros, like, "Oh, if you were gonna have somebody on a desert island, like one of the characters on a desert island with you, who would it be?" And she, like, started to answer Zayd, and then she answered Garrick, and she said, like, "Oh, but not for the reason why you think." And I immediately went to, "Well, he must be a distance builder. He can get you off the island." And I'm like, "What did she think we all jumped to for the first answer?" I was
Just
just
because he's good
like
looking.
yeah, I'm like, "Did you just think we were all immediately gonna jump to, like, a dick joke?" Like, I don't know. I I thought that was so I just
She
I was
must
like,
have
"What did she think we
accidentally
were gonna
kind of
talk
said it
about?"
and then realized she might have been giving away the secret, and then
Yeah.
she's quickly tried to turn it and be like, "Oh, but not for the reason you're thinking. He's not a distance wielder, like, not giving that away anytime soon."
Yeah, I was like, she must have just felt like she gave something away, but it was funny because, like, I was like, "Did she just immediately think we were all gonna, like, jump to him being hot or something?" Which, I mean, I understand, actually. I get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, yeah, no, I do totally I know Garrick's so my I know everyone loves Zayn, but I want to know Garrick more, and I am just hoping that he is okay after all this.
Mm.
This might be jumping into end stuff, but let's just go into it because it's best just to flow with where our brains are going. But okay, so we get that ending, and we know that
Mhm.
Xaden has this Venom brother.
Yes.
What is your take on that and who it might be? Because obviously the two biggest queries are Garrick and Bodhi, but what's your take?
Yeah, I spent so much time breaking down that me and my co-hosts, we actually did a whole episode just explaining the ending of the book because the last 100 pages of that book are so intense and so many people were like had so many questions about the end of the book
Yeah.
because the whole like those last like 5-ish chapters, there's so much happens, and then Violet gets hit with so much information in that last chapter where it just kind of feels like she's getting backhanded with answers, like, and
Yes.
information from Brennan, like, over and over and over again, and I'm like, "Wait, what? How
Yeah,
many
and
people
it's
are dead?"
jumping, it's jumping. It's like you get this bit of
Yeah,
information and then that bit, and then we had, like,
yeah,
Imogen's POV, Rhiannon's POV. There was
yeah,
very jumpy, and so
yeah,
trying to collate that. Please share some of what you shared
yeah,
in your podcast because that would
yeah.
be amazing. Please run
Yeah,
me through
it's
your take on the
it's
ending.
it's so much, and so and then I was lucky enough to get tickets to the Denver event with Rebecca Yarros. I don't know how I got tickets. I don't know. Zinal must have been looking down on me or something because I have no idea. But I managed to get tickets and I went, and somebody asked her about that, about who the brother could be, and the answer she gave kind of, she didn't say this, but the vibe I was getting was that we were maybe overthinking it a little bit. So I'm like, well, I feel like it has to be one of the obvious suspects, because she's like, well, who's missing at the end and who didn't have enough power? Basically, is kind. I'm very much paraphrasing here, but at the end of the book, I I'm leaning towards Garrick, which I don't love because I love Garrick so
I know.
much. Because at the end of Imogen's chapter, she's getting ready to put up the wards,
Yes.
and Bodhi is there with her. She can see
Mhm.
him, and his dragon had been injured, and Bodhi is like described as like retching on the ground,
Yes.
and so a lot of people think like, oh, he must have been turning in that moment. But I don't know how he could have gotten logistically from that spot to
Mm.
Xaden by the time Xaden channeled,
Mhm. Yes.
because these things happen so close together, it seems like, because we know that the beginning of Imogen's chapter overlaps with Violet because she sees Imogen launch at the a chapter right before Imogen's, with that's from Violet's POV.
Yes.
Violet sees Imogen launch, and then it picks up from Imogen's POV where she's launching after Bodhi.
Yes.
So because of the timing of it, I'm like, I don't know that Bodhi could have gotten to Xaden that quickly.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but Garrick was the one that could distance wheel, but he said he couldn't walk again because he was basically burning out.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering if he's the only one that could get to him at the end. Now, a lot of people said, like, well, what about Brennan? I'm like, well, Rebecca Yarrow specifically said who's missing at the end, and
Yeah,
Brennan
we know
wasn't
Brennan's
missing
not
at the end.
missing.
Yeah. And I'm like, Brennan's not missing at the end. And Xaden says it's someone that has known for like 5.5 months, basically the whole time, because this book takes place over about 6 months.
Yes.
And which Riddick didn't know the whole time. Sawyer didn't know the whole time. I just like, you start whittling down suspects of who could have known that
Yeah.
long. Arik potentially, because of his signet,
Mhm.
could have known the whole time and just maybe not realized it. Or Xaden didn't know he knew.
Mhm.
So I'm leaning towards Garrick or Bodhi, but I just don't know how logistically Bodhi would have gotten there in that amount of time, unless more time passed between that moment and when Xaden channels than we realize. But the way it's written, it seems like they happen fairly close together. So unfortunately, I'm leaning towards Garrick, which I don't love
I know.
because
Well,
I want to see him and Imogen in the next book so bad.
same. I need, like, their love story.
I
I
know.
I just that was such a good chapter and
Mhm.
what they were developing, and then to just have Garrett going on that same journey would kind of be sad. And I felt like there was a lot of Bodhi constantly, we don't know a lot about Bodhi, and he's always been this very, I know, we saw a lot of angst between him
Mhm.
and Xaden, and often feeling kind of unseen and undervalued and just told what to do. And I know you could see some of his frustration and that
Mhm.
could lead to him making a bad choice. Whereas Garrick really knew how bad being a venom would be, with the
Mhm.
exception that in that moment he did not have enough power and he could obviously have made a split second bad choice that has led to that. But for me, I just felt like the Garrick one was too obvious, that was, she'd really set that up to make it really clear that that was
Mhm.
maybe where it could go because he said he didn't have enough power. I'm hoping that was a trick, that was just to trick us and really as someone else. I'm the same. I mean, I think my main one is Bodhi, followed by
Mhm.
Garrick. And then I guess some of my more unhinged ones is, I guess, Riddick.
Mhm.
I do not think Arik, because I love Arik, and I could almost have Arik be my new MMC because I love Arik so much.
Yeah.
And his precognition, I'm obsessed. My only other one, which is super unhinged and really has no merit, but I just love to throw it out there because I could live with this person being a Venin, is Halden, because Halden has no power, obviously.
Mhm.
Basket boy who has to get carried around. I see, he would certainly be someone that would need power and wants control and things like that. And yeah, but whether he would be the last person that Xaden would ever think of, the only thing would be the frustration Xaden would have
Yeah.
having to like live with Halden as his brother. That would just kind of be really
Yeah.
humorous and hilarious.
I just because he says specifically that it's someone that can be used against him, and I'm not I guess I just don't know how Holden could be used against him because he talks about how, like, he doesn't really need Holden, they have Arik, there's a spare, so and he would probably rather have Arik take over the kingdom than Holden anyways.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I do think that would be an interesting twist, though, because he does hate Holden so much. So
And if this
much.
is someone that now he's not allowed to kill, he has to protect, like, I don't know, there's some kind of venom protection of each other. That would be
Mhm.
super frustrating for him to have to do that.
I was yeah, what I think is interesting is that he says it's another sibling, and it's the only time he uses the word sibling instead of brother during Xaden's
Yes.
POV chapter, and so I keep wondering if there's already been somebody this whole time that's been Venom that we don't realize,
Ah.
other than Jack, that could be used against Xaden, and I don't know who that could be. But I just keep so now I'm like, who's the other person? Like, I think the easy answer is it's Jack,
Mm-hmm.
but that means it has to be able to use Jack against him. And I'm like, how can they use Jack against Xaden? What does Jack have that Xaden needs?
Yes.
Or I just don't know what it could be because I had a theory, which I was obviously wrong about. I'm like, well, maybe Jack somehow figured out where Violet's dad's research was and has it. And like has it hidden or something because they seem like they need that information.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
that would be good leverage. I just don't know what other leverage he could have.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I'm like, if it's not Jock, then who else is it? And I just thought it was interesting the only time he uses the word sibling, which makes me think it's not a brother. And
Mm.
so I was like,
Oh, so you mean
who
you think could be a female? Like could be
yeah,
one of the girls?
potentially. And I believe we have a non-binary character in the series too. So
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting. I was like, I feel like maybe it's not a brother, maybe it's someone else that like is gonna be like the bigger twist
Mm.
that there'll turn out there will be this other person that's been Venom also this whole time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that'd be really interesting.
Yes, yes, I'm very. I hope it's something that does surprise us. That we,
Yeah.
because as I said, Garrick is quite obvious. Even Bodhi now, we sort of that's what we're leaning towards. I would love to go, oh, psych! It's actually like I don't want it to be Riddick or something, but just
Mhm.
something that we're not maybe expecting, so that it just adds to the excitement and the layers and
Yeah.
things. It's going to
I think it'd
be
be an interesting twist if it was Serena, because she was missing this whole book. We never actually see her.
no.
And so I thought that would be interesting.
And what was your take on some of the characters that we maybe didn't see a lot in this book? So that was maybe one of the things that I felt because this book was different and we were very
Mhm.
focused on going to the Isles and Quest Squad. We didn't see a lot of some of our favorite characters. Like we didn't see a lot of Jacinia. We didn't see a lot of Rhiannon. There was I don't know, people who were normally at Basgiath that were really large parts of Iron Flame and Fourth Wing kind of weren't as we didn't see as much of them in this book. What was your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that if they went to the Isles, it wasn't gonna be realistic that she was gonna get to take her whole squad. That just would
Yeah.
not make
No.
sense. As
No.
much fun as it would be to just see them all out on this quest together trying to figure it out as second years, I knew that just wasn't realistic. But I did miss them in this book a little bit, but I will say I feel like a lot of the moments we got with them really counted, like seeing Imogen and Violet's relationship. I really
Yes.
loved that
Love it.
development. Yeah, she was so supportive of Violet, and Violet had so much trust in her, and I feel like we really got to see that in this book. So, even though I got less of a lot of the characters I loved, I still liked to see the development in the relationships that happened, even
Yeah.
though we didn't get as much of them. So I think the moments we got really counted.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I
Yes.
really loved the Reed chapter and Imogen chapter at the end. I
All right,
loved it personally.
let's talk about those chapters because
Yeah.
I feel like those were 2 chapters that you went, "What is this? Why are they here?" I feel like they're important. I feel like they're
Yeah.
important. So let's break them down.
Yeah.
What is your take, or which one do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about Imogen's POV or Rhiannon's POV? Because I have
I
to
think
admit, yeah, go.
I was just say I think the read one happened first. I
Yes.
tend to put things in chronologically automatically
Yes,
in my brain,
yes.
but we
All
can start
right.
wherever you want.
No, Rhiannon. Let's talk about the Rhiannon POV because this was a very. I must admit, the first time I read this, I almost rushed this chapter because it just felt
Mhm,
like fighting. It just felt like
mhm.
she was just in the middle of a battle and she was just doubting some of her decisions as she was, it was just like we were just kind of seeing it from her perspective and probably comparing it to Violet's perspective of how she is in a battle with Taryn and things, and now we're sort of seeing Ree's point of view. But what is your thoughts on this?
I loved the chapter personally, and I do think there are some Easter eggs in there, that are gonna be important, and part of what I really liked about it was seeing Violet trust in her squad and getting to shift that perspective, which hopefully for the reader felt like they could trust that Violet was holding her own while we were experiencing something from another perspective, so I liked that confidence in the character's ability to handle things, and I everything between her, like, how sh her interaction with her dragon, I love getting to see the different interactions with the dragons, to see how
Yes,
different they all
they're
are.
so different, and that's something we
Yeah.
got in this book that we hadn't got in any other books,
Mhm,
that they are all so different. We realize that
mhm.
the dragons have very unique personalities and their bonds with their riders are completely different.
Yes. Yeah, and I love getting to see that and to know their personalities, and I just really loved it, and I felt like we got some of that on Quest Squad with Aetrim, like, obviously, we don't get it from his
Yeah.
perspective, but we really got to see their dynamic a lot, which
Mhm.
helped. So, we don't get to see Rhee's dynamic with her dragon much, so I absolutely loved it. I will say I think there's an interesting Easter egg in this chapter with Riddick,
Tell,
where
tell, tell.
she is she looks over and she sees, Riddick is getting chased by this green fire wyvern, which are supposed to be the fastest dragons. They're supposed to be faster th or the wyvern are the faster than any dragon. They're faster than
Yeah,
Tern,
yeah,
but
yeah.
he outruns the green fire wyvern, and I'm like,
Mm.
"How does he outrun the green fire wyvern? They're the fastest dragon, so how does he outrun the dragon and its fire?" And so, I think there's something going on there with Riddick and his dragon that we don't know about. There is something suspicious happening there.
Is this like a concern about whether maybe Riddick is Venom, and that because I think one of the things we do when she talks about someone that doesn't have enough power, we've seen Riddick's power multiply
Yeah.
in this book, that he kind of went from just having one of the weaker signets, and now he's managed to wield that signet in really really strong ways, making him a very formidable um rider.
Mhm.
And as you said, he's also got speed. Is it just that he's manifested it a lot stronger than we were expecting, or is there more to it?
Yeah, I think there's gonna be a different twist to this personally. I totally understand the Venom theory, and I think it has a lot of merit for a lot of reasons, including the fact that I think there was parts of Riddick that were just kinda suspicious in this book,
Mhm.
personally. But that being said, I loved Riddick. He was my favorite part of the whole book.
Yeah.
He was like the humor this book needed because this book felt
Yes.
like a 500-page long anxiety attack of like, what's
Yeah.
gonna happen next?
We needed Riddick to soften it,
Yeah.
soften the blows. Yeah.
Yes. You definitely needed Riddick to like soften it so much. But there were moments where I'm like, there's something suspicious about Riddick in this book that I just couldn't quite put my finger on. Like his like, absolute determination to get on Quest Squad. I I think there was something else going on there. I think there was something else maybe he was looking for in the Isles that they didn't realize.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
don't know that it's at his venin, but again, I think that has a lot of merit. I think there's gonna be an additional twist to it just because of his personality. Like,
Yeah.
unless because Xaden just gets so cold throughout this book
Yes.
and so hardened, and they say it really strips you of your emotions, but Riddick just gets funnier as this book goes on.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I
And
don't maybe
and
that
he's very
fits, but I it just doesn't seem to fit with what we know about the Venom, but maybe it does.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. I have a whole theory on Riddick, and I don't know if you saw my theory about
Oh, no, please
the
tell me.
importance. Well, okay. So Riddick, so we know that Riddick has really multiplied like his ice wielding power, and he
Mhm.
can actually like freeze the inside of like an orange or a dragon or
Yeah.
wyvern.
Yeah.
So I was like, what if now we know that Violet, one of the biggest issues she has with her power is that she overheats. As she's wielding too much of it, she overheats, and that is putting her at risk. So therefore, she has to stop wielding. What if they can work together? What if they have almost a
Oh.
Karanum kind of thing? What if he can control his power? So rather than fully freezing, he can just cool down. But if they work together, he may have the ability to cool her down so that she can wield so much more. So I could kind of see
Ooh.
there being sort of that real relationship between those two where his magic can really assist her with hers. And I know a lot of people that have spoken about Riddick actually being in love with Violet.
Mhm.
Not that I don't really see Rebecca going and shifting love interests. She doesn't seem like the sort to take us away from Xaden and have a
Mhm.
whole different love interest as we go along. And I don't think it would be Riddick. But I do see, and I think a lot of people loved this particular theory online because I think it potentially points to Riddick not dying and hopefully having an important role in the future and staying as an important part of the story. So
I love
yeah,
that theory because I would love anything that gives me hope that he's gonna hang on through book 5 because I love him so much. But I do like the theory that, like, that to for Violet to be stronger, she does need her squad, and I
yeah,
really think that fits in with a lot of things Rebecca Yarros has said about that in order to be strong, they have to be strong as a team, and that's why she
yes,
doesn't wanna make anybody overpowered. So I think it really fits in with things like that, and so I do really love that theory. I have personally wondered if Riddick has some sort of unrequited feelings for Violet
yeah,
in the background, just because even in like in Fourth Wing, he jokes around about offering to sleep with her, and then
mhm,
in Iron Flame, I don't know, he's just such like a quiet, caring presence for her. Like he's always trying to help take care of her and check on her and make sure she's okay.
yes,
And that very much could just be like a very good friendship. But I have wondered at times, but I don't think that's where the storyline is going at all. Like, I
yes,
don't think it's going where there's going to be any sort of love triangle or anything like that. Rebecca Yarros has said she doesn't really like to write love triangles, so I definitely don't
exactly,
think that's where we're going with this at all, if it is true. But I do think his backstory, whatever it is going to be really interesting. And I
yeah.
can't wait for
Yes,
more Riddick backstory. I want to know everything about him. I want his full dossier.
oh, 100%. And we know, and Rebecca has said so many times in the most recent interviews that so much of these books have all been in Violet's POV, was all been Violet's point of view. So we haven't really seen things from others' perspectives. I think something I really love that Riddick did in this book was we actually saw a more serious side to him when Violet did come out and admit like he was the first of her group to find out that Xaden was Venom, and he was really concerned about her. And he was really saying, everyone that knows about him so far, they're on Zayden's side. They're Zayden's friends. They're not your friends. I'm the first one that actually knows and is concerned about your welfare. And that was one of the things I found really challenging in this book was really kind of this toxic relationship between Zayden and Violet. It was very, she was in this space where it was like being in love with an addict or something like that, where she was going, oh no, he's just not going to do it again. He's promised not to do it again. As long as he doesn't do it again, it should be okay. We can control this, we can manage it. But knowing that it was going on a dark path, and I really liked how it was Riddick who came to her and really laid it out. It was like, what point? At what point do you say, I need to walk away? I need to walk away because this is not safe for me. And I really liked how he stepped up. We saw some real maturity from Riddick that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, I think that moment just showed really what a good friend he is to her.
Mm.
Because I think part of being a really good friend is sometimes forcing your friends to kinda draw a line in the sand like that, and I thought that was a really important moment to show his maturity level, his care for Violet, his care for making Violet care about Violet. Like, you need to
Yes.
start putting yourself first a little bit too here. But yeah, I do think the way Violet was so hyper focused on Xaden, I in the beginning of the book, she talks about how there's this moment where she talks about how, like, she never got the chance to have the relationship with her mom that she wanted, and I think
Yes.
that's why she was so hyper focused on acting like she had the relationship she wanted with Xaden right now,
Yeah.
was because she was like, "Well, there might not be a future, I didn't get that with my mom." So she's just, like, acting like she can have it now because she doesn't think she'll
Yes.
get it in the future, and so I think there's a bit of lack of closure she got with that, that is
Yes.
fueling this hyper focus with Xaden, which I thought was written well because I as much as it's, like, frustrating, I do think it's realistic in a way
Oh,
when you love somebody
100%.
like that, that you just don't give up.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's very much I think what we saw in this book is how similar Violet really is to her mum. She doesn't want to admit that, but she
Yeah.
really is. Her mum was adamant that she was protecting her children. When she was on a warpath, she was on a warpath, and Violet's exactly the same. She's a lot more like her mum than she thinks. And yeah, I agree. I think there's possibly some trauma there. We don't even think about the fact that this is transpiring just after those events occurred. She lost her mum. Xaden turned venom. That's that would be hugely traumatic for someone. And this is her
Yeah.
coping mechanism has been I'm just going to find a cure. I'm going to find a cure for Xaden. I'm squashing all this down. If I just focus myself on this quest, I don't have to deal with my emotions right now. I can tuck all that under a rug, ignore it, and just focus on because that's all that matters right now. I need him. I need this love in my life, and that is my main priority. I think something that is quite interesting and concerning is I don't know how things are going to go for Xaden in these future books. I think Rebecca made it pretty obvious that we're not just going to find some magical cure here, that there is no cure. You know, she kind of made a joke of it that they were hoping they'd find some random island, and if they're under the moon on the 30th night with the right crystal, like they would find, you know, she I think by doing that she really outlined they're not just going to find some magical cure to sort this all out. We're possibly seeing what happens when you make a bad choice and there's no coming back from it. What are your thoughts on that?
So I don't know if there's gonna be, like, a cure in the sense that, like, he's just gonna find, like, some little vial of antidote and drink it and have all of his soul back, but I do think there's a path back, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it's necessarily an easy path. I I do think there is a path back, though, because I do think they're gonna end up together in the end of this
Yeah,
series.
yeah,
Personally, Rebecca Yarros has made comments in the past that, like, essentially that she's a romance writer first, and romance books have, to an extent, like, a certain expectation with the readers of a happily ever after at
yeah,
the end. So I do think we're gonna get that at the end of the
yeah.
series, and I do think there is a path back for Xaden. I don't think it's gonna be easy. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's going to have to be him choosing in every moment to take every step of that path back, and I think that's gonna be hard, but I do think we're gonna get there. I just don't know exactly what that will look like at this point. Um,
There's going to be a
but
lot of darkness before we get to the light. I feel like there's going to be some
yeah,
dark days. We're going to
yeah,
be very Star Wars, like Darth, dark side for a while. I mean, I think there's a lot of
yeah.
predictions that Zayden's going to end up being Maven full blown, but it'll probably only be him going to the darkest of points for him to kind of
Mhm.
come back from that.
Yeah, I do think he's gonna get darker before it gets better, personally, totally agree with that. But it's like I think that it's one of the Erids says that, like, that they have to choose to evolve, and
Yeah.
I think there's gonna be a certain element of that, of him truly having to be okay with giving up access to that power, even if it means letting people die.
Hmm.
And I think there's gonna have to be an element of that because at this point, it's like he doesn't wanna turn, but he's also just not willing to let people die. He's not
Still
willing to let
wants that
civilians
power.
die.
He still wants access to power. Like, if he had to give up all his power altogether, like lose
Yeah.
Sigale, lose all power, would he really be
Yeah.
willing to do that? He kind of wants his cake and to eat it too.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, he has decided that his soul is an okay price for that. I will say though, there was a moment though where he talks about how like he didn't even realize he was reaching, and it felt like just a like an impulsive reflex.
Yes.
And so it does seem like kind of once you start sliding into it, you kind of just keep sliding, which
Yes.
is really, really sad and depressing. But I like I said, I do think there will be a path back for him though, but I do think it's gonna be really hard, and I think it's going to involve, like, this whole theme of nature likes everything in balance,
Yes.
which he seems to start to recognize near the end of Onyx Storm, where he's, like, trying to put magic back into the earth of where he drained from, like, trying to restore balance. But I think it's gonna be obviously more difficult than that, but
Yeah.
I don't know how they restore balance to magic at this point, though, with this, like, arms race of, like, signets and venom power that seems to be happening, and I
Mm.
think that has to be checked as well in order for Xaden to go back, um,
Yeah.
and so it's like, I don't know how we do that unless at the end of the series, like, nobody has signets anymore, which I think would be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's probably, I wonder if it will have something to do with the whole, how this whole issue with the venom and that is actually resolved. Whatever this cure is for the whole venom is part of what will actually cure Xaden. So the whatever Violet is truly searching for, which will have something possibly to do with the Irids and what they've been trying to get across, and possibly the gods. We have a lot, obviously the gods were really introduced in this book, and I think there's a lot more to that. I think that Papa Sorengale did know more than, I think he had an idea of what was needed. And obviously, we can go into in a little bit as to what your thoughts are on why he possibly had tried to get Violet blessed by Dun or June, however
Mhm.
you say it. Um, because it seems like he had an idea of what was going to transpire and what he needed, how he needed to set Violet up, whether that was as a protection, whether that was having some idea of what she was going to need to be in the future and what kind of connection she was going to need to have to the gods. I know there's a lot of theories around Malik and Violet's connection to Malik. So that there's a lot there from the gods' perspective as well, and that could be a big part of it too. But yeah, all right, we've sidetracked slightly. Let's go back to. We can go into that in a little bit. We'll go to gods later. But Rhiannon's POV. Was there
Mhm.
any other major standouts for Rhiannon's POV that you kind of thought, "Oh, that's a really good Easter egg that I think you should keep in your back pocket for next time"?
Um, I'm trying to, like, think of all my notes I have on the Rhiannon chapter in my back pocket. But I have I just feel like all the observations of Riddick from Rhiannon's point of view are really interesting. All of it, I think, is very interesting. So that's really what I was mostly
Mhm.
paying attention
Yeah,
to in that moment. Yeah, I'm just gonna
yeah,
say pay attention to her observations of Riddick in that moment. I think
yeah,
all of
yeah.
her observations of him are quite interesting.
Yeah, well, it's going to be very interesting based on what Rebecca has said in interviews that we're getting a lot of this story from Violet's POV, and we may get a very different take. And I've got to guess it's characters that we've only
Mhm,
seen one side of certain characters because that's how Violet has seen them. And then
mhm.
entering the next book, we're going to suddenly see it from a very different perspective. I'm hoping we get lots more of the other POVs in the next book because I really just want to see it go that way, particularly Imogen. So let's jump
Mhm.
into Imogen's POV now because I
Yes.
love, obviously, based on our last conversation, I
Yeah.
love Imogen, and I was so hoping I was probably overreading into things, but
Mm.
obviously for anyone that didn't watch our last episode with Karly, she shared her amazing theory that Imogen might be connected to the royal bloodline with her green eyes, and that she possibly has a similar kind of connection to I guess to June, similar to Violet, where she has hair but she's actually colored it pink so as to cover it up. But okay, I guess those are probably two separate things here. So maybe break down which one you'd rather cover first. You want to talk about the POV first, and then we can jump into that theory and what your sort of take is post this book, and what your thoughts are
Yeah.
on Imogen at the end.
Oh my gosh, when it comes to Imogen, I'm passionate about all of it. I
Yeah.
also love Imogen. I think she's such an interesting character. I think she's such a well-balanced character. I like how you get so much from Imogen with, like, not a ton like, her dialogue is written so carefully
Yes.
where she doesn't say a ton of words, but you get so much meaning out of what she
Oh,
says. So
100%.
I just love the way she's written, and that whole chapter with her second signet reveal, which I have so many questions about.
Yes.
I just have she's some sort of, stone wielder,
Yes.
but she turned, like, another object into it, so I'm like, "Does she need other objects to turn into stone, or can she just make stone?" Or, like, I just have so many questions about how that signet works.
Yeah, yeah,
I
and
love
and then we
Jane.
kind of yeah, we got, like, an indication that that signet seems to be somewhat connected to her family, because when she describes it, we really get the idea of how they open up to this second signet, that she sort of thought
Mhm.
about, I think it was her mother, and that she kinda draws that power in that way, but yeah, share, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's something that she gets from her mom. Um,
Or if
I
that's
think
what
I
grounds
I
her.
I was thinking as of what grounds her in that moment personally, but Sawyer makes a comment about how there hasn't been a stone wielder in their history, and I just have spiraled about that because I'm like, well, then why would you know what to call it if there hasn't been one in your history? So I'm
Yeah.
not sure if she's supposed to be the first or the second. But it's
Oh.
clearly a very rare signet, so I'm not sure if she even knows fully how it works because I'm guessing it's hard to train if you're trying to keep it secret.
Yeah, 100%.
Um, and I wonder if has been anyone helping her. Like, I wonder how much Felix has been helping them train, like how much he knows about their second signets because he seems to be the one that helps train signets in Orisha. So I've been
Yeah.
wondering if he knows about it. And I just have so many questions about that signet. I had not enough information, that's for
No,
sure, which seemed to be a
no.
running theme in this book.
Exactly. That's this whole book in its entity.
Yeah.
I think where Iron Flame we came away and were able to create so many theories because we got enough information to really flesh them out. Whereas in this one, there's so many holes in it. You're like, I
Yeah.
kind of know, but I also have no idea. I can't really grasp anything
Mhm.
without more information to really turn it into something that feels like a solid theory. You're just kind of guessing.
Yeah, but man, that part of the Imogen chapter though with Quinn, I cried so hard. I cried for so long after that chapter. I didn't think Quinn would hit me like that, but it never occurred to me we would get it, from Imogen's POV,
Well,
and their whole relationship was so beautiful, and that quote about, like, "We made it a good one," oh, still gets me.
oh, yeah, and I think when you, do feel that connection to Imogen and you know what a brash, she has a hard shell. She has a hard
Yes.
shell. She does not let people in at all. So when she does, you know that she feels it twice as much as everyone else. That's part of the reason that we love her so much because she's been a really tough nut to crack when it's come to getting her to open up to Violet and things like that. So obviously, they're one of the only relationships that Imogen had, and to lose that is going to have a real impact on her and how she responds to things in the future because she does not let people in easily. I loved, on a lighter note, the
Mm.
relationship that Imogen has with her dragon. We see
Yes.
another very unique, and you also go, how
Mhm.
could Imogen ever have had a different kind of dragon? Like
Yeah.
this dragon that's like, I've done 17 kills, and Imogen's like, no, it's actually 16 because you're counting that one that you didn't actually do. So,
Yes. I love how they're, like, competitive and they don't coddle each other, but they
no.
also kinda have still this light teasing relationship to a certain extent. It was fantastic. Everything about these broadened relationships we get to see, these insights into the dragons and their personalities, it was one of my favorite parts
Same.
of the books. I could take more POV chapters from absolutely everybody just so I could learn more about the different dragons.
Well, I think it's something we didn't know about the dragons, did we? We kind of assumed that many of them would be like Taryn and Segale, where they were just
Mhm.
very kind of formal and professional, and they're,
Yes.
they're professional dragons.
Yes.
They take themselves very seriously. We quickly
Yeah.
learn in this one, not at all. We've got Atrum, who's like a 22-year-old dragon that's very young and immature and playing practical jokes, and then we've got Imogen's dragon, who is a similar kind of personality to Imogen, who doesn't want to deal with emotions and things like that, and would
Mhm.
rather be competitive and covers up their feelings with those sorts of things. They don't want to admit how much they maybe actually do care about each other and things, and they'll cover it up with other ways of dealing and coping with their
Mhm.
emotions.
Yeah, I do love how we get to see those personalities mirrored in There's Dragons a little bit, which it's funny because you think, uh, Taryn is so different than Violet, and the other dragons seem to kind of mirror their personalities a little bit, so it makes you wonder how much more like Taryn Violet is, and because she always talks about how she doesn't wanna be a leader, and he's a
Yes.
general, but I think she has more of that in her than she realizes.
Yeah, I think it was pretty obvious in this one that she's in denial that she is 100% a leader and she's
Yeah.
already cheating, and everyone knows it except Violet. Violet's just in denial, but hopefully that's what we're going to see in the next couple of books is her
Yeah,
really rising up to that and owning who she really is and the leader that she is, and that she really doesn't have a
agreed.
choice when she's got Taryn.
Yeah, I loved her confidence in this book, and I would like to see her embrace that role a little more with
Yeah.
this new confidence we got to see in her in this book.
Yeah, 100%. So, what was your take on some of the ending? Because you said you've obviously done a fairly big breakdown. A
Yeah.
whole lot happened in that with Taryn and Stigale and
Yeah.
Benin and Theophany and then of course the very, very end where we get the massive shock reveal. But yeah, what's your take on the ending?
I really liked it. It did kinda I don't know, like, if you ever watched one of those movies where it's like everything's going wrong, there's, like, sirens going off, and there's red lights flashing, and everybody's yelling something at each other. That's what the end of the book felt like in those
Yeah,
last 5
yeah.
pages, and I was just like, "What is happening?" Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know that even I was expecting to have as many questions at the end of
Mhm.
this book as I felt like I was left with, because for as many questions as I got answered throughout these books, I left with so many more.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
so many.
Someone
Uh,
described it as it was like it wasn't we didn't get left on a cliffhanger, we got left on a cliff dangle where we, like, woke up dangling off a cliff, have no idea how we got there,
yeah,
everything's everywhere. It's yeah, it was we didn't kinda wake up, we didn't kinda just we got left we have no idea really what's going on, little bits and
yeah.
pieces, but we're very much left in a shock kind of situation.
Yeah. Well, and I think you have to feel that way because that's how Violet feels, right? Like she has had her memories taken away from
Oh,
her and she just wakes up in the middle of it. And so you're really feeling it the way she felt it. So I thought the writing there was so good because it would have been so overwhelming to her to
mm,
have had her memories erased and then wake up at the end of this and been like, wait, what? And it's just all of this information being thrown at her at once. And it's a massive info dump of Brennan on her that is probably also traumatizing at the same time.
yeah. And then of course the first thing we ask ourselves is why? Why has she asked Imogen to wipe her memories? Why has she had that done? What
Oh,
like
yeah. I definitely think it's because that whatever she knew, she could have been executed for treason. And they're
ooh,
worried about, they have truth sayers in this world, and I'm sure she's
yes.
gonna be questioned, and she can't tell them what she doesn't know. She can't lie about what she doesn't know.
Yeah.
So I'm convinced that she had her memories erased so that way she could not be tried for treason.
Yeah.
So
That's
I'm
a
convinced. I
very
think
good
that's
justification.
yeah, I think that's what that comment in Darna makes about how she's like, I won't let them burn you because that's like how they kill people who have committed treason. They like die by dragon fire. And she's like, I won't let them burn you. And so I think that's what she was saying
Yes.
in that moment. So that kind
Oh,
of seems to
because
be what it's
that's
alluding to.
something yes, because
Yeah.
that's something that we've always said. We're like, why is Andana saying I won't let them burn you? And I'm like,
Yeah.
what does that mean? It just kind
Yeah.
of came out of nowhere. Even Andana coming back after she broke the bond
Mhm.
or blocked it or whatever she's done, she just kind of comes back like not so long later, and you're like, why? And then yeah, and then there's that phrase, and obviously it's jumping, but that makes so much sense that yes. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I think my co-host and I, we collected I I wanna say 20-ish questions from people. So we collected a ton of questions. We collected way more than 20, but what we found was that it was like a repetitive 20-ish
Yes, yes.
questions, 18 or 20 questions where people are asking the same question over and over again. And we just I mean, absolutely line by line crawled through the last 100 pages of that book and then
Amazing. Mhm.
convened and figured out the answers to, like, those questions the best we could. We were like, "Well, this is probably what it meant, potentially what it meant." So yeah, that's all in our, like, ending breakdown because we were like, I just felt like at the end of that book, everybody's like, "I really don't know what just happened." I'm like
Trying to figure this out.
yeah. So we
Yeah.
really do have to I will say a lot of people I know who were really overwhelmed by the book and they weren't sure how they felt about it. Everyone I know who's reread it feels a lot better after the
Yeah.
reread.
Yeah.
The reread really does help provide so much more insight. I know that
100%.
can be kind of daunting for a book that felt potentially overwhelming on the first read, but I loved it the first read, but I really loved it on the second read. I loved
Yeah,
it
well,
so much more.
I did the audiobook as the second read, so I
Mhm.
obviously thrilled through it reading it the first time, and I really think
Mhm.
a nice way to do it a second time is to do it with audiobook. Obviously, it's a
Yeah.
different style of, you're listening rather than reading. You can
Mhm.
do it as you're doing chores around the house and driving places, so I think that's a nice way to sometimes go over it again, and it's really interesting sometimes listening rather than reading, because
Mhm.
sometimes I don't know about you, but I'll occasionally be rushing and I'll skip a paragraph or something, or even when at the way they deliver the line, you'll hear it from
Mhm.
a different perspective and it will add a lot more to what's discussed. So,
Oh,
yeah.
definitely. I pick up things on audiobook that I don't pick up on a read because I'll realize where the narrator will put the emphasis. And I'm
Yes.
like, oh, there's a lot more surprise or concern here in this scene that maybe I realized on my first read. And you'll pick it up from a narrator. And
Mhm.
so I totally agree, and I also like the audiobook. Rebecca Soler, I believe, does the narration for that, series, and I really like her narration style. I think she does a great
Yeah,
job.
yeah, I agree. I agree. She did an amazing job. So, what was your take on that very end? Do you think Zayden and Violet are married? What was your
Oh,
take on
yeah.
the ring on the finger and it's yours now?
Yeah. I definitely think they're married. I think they went back to the temple that was there in Arisha, the Dune temple, because that priestess owed them a favor,
Yes.
from protecting it, during that one battle, and so I think they went back there, and I think they really are married.
Yes.
So, I think a lot of people are really, freaked out by that idea, but I'm really excited for it. But yeah, I do think they are actually married. I think that's why she had the ring on her finger. I think that's why Brennan kind of did a double take when he saw her. Um, yeah, I definitely think she's married, and I think they did
Yeah,
it at that
yeah.
temple
Oh,
Dune
I
in
know people, I
Risha.
mean, I think the main thing is people are just upset that we didn't get to see this wedding.
Yeah.
We obviously don't like to find out that there was an amazing wedding between Xaden and Violet, and we didn't get to be part of it, but we may still get that in the future. I think something that's really interesting is if that did happen, how we anticipate what Ben and are like, it sort of suggests that there is still an aspect of Xaden in there, that he was caring enough and aware enough to go, I only need to do this for Violet. I need to do
Mhm,
this for the welfare of Aracia. He still had, because we imagine being Benin, all your care and emotions and empathy has disappeared, yet he
mhm.
still seemed to have enough of himself to go, I need to do this because it's the right thing. Um, what is your
Yeah.
take?
Well, I definitely think that when he was channeling and he could, like, feel his soul, I think he said it was, like, turning to ash. It was so sad, but he says that he held on to the love, and that
Yeah.
was the last piece he held on to.
Mhm.
So, I definitely think that he still has that part of him still, like, the love for Violet, the love he has for Sigale and for Orisha. I think he still has all that, and, isn't it, like I think it's the sage, right, that tells him, like, you'll turn for the most is it the most dangerous reason of all? You'll turn for love?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so, it's almost like they knew this was gonna happen, which is a little scary.
Yeah.
Um, but so I definitely think that's the part of him he still has. So I think he's still capable of that, but it's now, what else is he capable of now that he's lost so much of his soul,
Oh,
which is
I
what I'm
know.
concerned about.
Yeah, yeah. One of the interesting takes that I've had a few people talk about from the Isles is one of the Isles they didn't go to was, and I don't recall what the exact name of it is, but it was the Love the Love
Mhm.
Island. So,
Yeah. I don't remember what it's
the
called either. I know it's Loyal's Island. I don't remember
Yeah,
what they
yeah, but
call it
they kind
though.
of said they feel like that could be a really important pivotal island that we haven't
Mhm.
been to yet that may have some important aspect to the future books. It's interesting that that particular one was missed, particularly when we know that the last aspect that Xaden has held on to is love, whether that's going to have an important role in the future.
Oh, I definitely think it has to, right?
Yeah,
Because, like I said, he said that the most you'll turn for the most dangerous reason of all, love. And I have said for a while that I think that, Xaden's story and Violet's story to a certain extent is mirroring what happened 600 plus years ago with the Venin originally, that whoever
yeah.
turned Venin originally also potentially did it for love, that they
Mm,
we're also trying to save somebody or protect somebody. So, I definitely think Loyal has to come into play in a significant way because of this. I just don't think there's any getting around that. Like, it has to, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't think it's a big leap to be like, it has to be important. Um,
yeah.
I
No,
just don't know exactly what that's gonna mean for
no.
healing your soul or evolving or solving this issue. But I definitely think this came into play with the Venom when they originally were created was,
Yeah.
this was also out of love, like, out of, wanting to protect people that they loved.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And while we're on the subject of the Isles, I want to get your thoughts on one of them, which
Mhm,
was Aiden's mum's island. Like that one,
mhm.
like lots of things happen on the various islands. There was obviously the Luck Island. We've been told all those gifts had just like there's some reasoning behind it. So that'll be
Mhm.
interesting to explore. Ali and I kind of went through that and tried to break down what each one could possibly mean. Not that we really couldn't come up with a lot of reasons for some of them. Um, but I thought that the isle that Zeta's mum is on, like I had huge ideas of what her significance to all this could be. I had theories that she might be a Venin queen, that there could be a royal family with the Venin. I had lots of anyway, but instead, we kind of just found out that she's on this very creepy island, which has
Yes.
no power at all. She is married to this not overly nice, leader who has sort of the purple eyes, and they're quite cruel. Yeah, it was a very strange. We didn't really. We obviously had what happened there, but we didn't then spend much time after that. They just kind of whisked away, and we didn't get many questions answered. But what is your take on? Do you have any thoughts on that aisle? And
Oh, I have so many thoughts on that
there's
aisle.
so many. I know. How do I break it down into like a few minutes?
Yeah, I that aisle is so, so suspicious to me.
Yeah, same.
Everything about it, as soon as I get there and Darna's like, "I don't like it here. My people wouldn't be here. I wanna
Yeah,
leave." Like,
yeah.
she knows instantly, like, something's
This is
wrong
bad.
here.
Yeah,
And more so than the other aisles, because they don't there wasn't magic either, like, at Umbriel and whatnot, like, there wasn't magic at Deverelli, but at there, she was like, "There's something wrong." So it's not the lack of magic, it's something else?
like an evil or something. That's
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, "What happened here?" And then there's all this suspicious thing about how it was raised 150 years
yeah. It's
ago.
all
I'm
brand
like,
new.
"What is going on here?" It's very creepy. I do have some thoughts on it, but they're not really super fleshed out yet.
Yes. Well, I
But
have one. Yeah,
oh, go
you go
ahead.
first, then I'll
Uh,
share one of my thoughts.
I will say I'm not buying that it's the Isle of Wisdom. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not buying that Hedian is the god of wisdom.
Ooh.
I'm not buying that because nothing about that felt that way to me.
Mhm.
Everything about that isle did not feel that way at all.
Yeah.
So, I'm not I'm personally not buying that. I
Yes.
don't
Yeah.
I don't think Hedian's the god of wisdom.
What do you think he's the god of? Cruelty? Evil?
If I had to guess, it would be chaos.
Ooh.
It would be
Yeah.
chaos.
Hey, yeah. Okay.
Everything about that isle is very chaotic.
Mhm.
Everything that happened there felt very chaotic, and I the Eris birds,
Mhm.
Eris is the god of chaos,
Yes.
like
Yes.
in mythology, and so I'm kinda leaning towards that. So it wouldn't surprise me if we get that twist of either Hedian isn't the god of wisdom or the god of chaos is there pretending to be the god of wisdom. So would
Ooh, that's
not
very interesting.
yeah, it would not surprise me. Um, it also wouldn't surprise me if that location was originally Loyal's location, and that's why it was raised 150 years ago.
And that
Um,
almost wonder if it has I know, I have a belief that that somehow connects to Venom, especially with the
mm,
knowledge that we know that they've often outlined that Maven, you wouldn't even know. You wouldn't even know that you're sitting in a room with them. Like, they're so powerful that they can obviously somewhat cover up how they actually look. That I know that's something that's been discussed in other parts of the book, which makes me go, could we could we maybe I'm just still holding on to
mhm,
my royalty venom kind of aspect, but going, maybe this is still like the head office of of the venom. And as I definitely think that there's something not quite right there, and I don't know how Zayn's mum's got embroiled in it, and if she
mhm,
is fully part of it, or if she is a victim of it herself. Obviously, she's got
mm,
two sons there now, so she's more connected than ever. But we didn't get a lot of answers. One of the pieces that I picked up that I thought, oh, this really could outline why there's something going on that aisle. Theophany in those final chapters is talking to Violet, and she starts instructing her on how to protect your power and she says the first thing you learn as a Venom is to protect your power. And the best thing to do is to take the power from the ground that you're on. She said, preferably yourself. You take that power away and then you're protected, because that power, that ground now has no power and they can't take it from you. And I thought that's very interesting, because this isle had no power whatsoever, to the point that even an Andana felt uncomfortable there. So you have to wonder, have they pulled every ounce of power from that island to protect themselves? To protect
mm.
themselves if they were somehow connected to the venom.
So do you think that the venom can survive without channeling? Like, that they can continue to survive?
We don't know enough about the Maven. I think your general
Yeah.
Venom, no, they need to
Mhm,
they need to pull from the ground, they need to often, but we don't know enough yet about the Maven and their level
mhm,
of control, because it sounds like when you get to that level, they can live amongst normal people. They have an extreme wealth of power. We don't know how you get to that level and what that looks like, but I guess theoretically I can almost see them getting to a stage where they have a lot of control, that maybe they take huge amounts of power and then they don't need to take it again for quite some time. Um, it's something that's not necessarily answered, but it
mhm,
sounds like and if you are a massive well of power, you then want to protect that. Theophany really spoke about protecting your power. So if these Maven have, maximum levels of power, they might not need to draw a whole lot more. They might be just all about protecting it. I don't know.
No,
That's
that's really interesting because you're right. I mean, we don't know a lot about once you become Maven, like how much can you survive? Because it kind of seemed like Jack couldn't keep surviving without channeling,
not yeah.
but Mavens, we don't know that. I mean, we know so little about them. And what's funny is like sometimes I forget that in the book, the writers, even Violet, like knows less about them than like we seem to assume about them because
Yeah.
she's like surprised that they're immortal. And I'm like, oh, I was just basing this off like vampire rules. I've been assuming they've been immortal this whole time. And I realized I've never actually been told that. I've just been assuming that. And I was like, oh, she's surprised by this. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess we've never have been told. Or like she's surprised that they have signets, but I was like, but at the end of 4th Wing, it kinda seemed like they might have been wielding some
Mm,
signets, so I was like,
mhm.
"Oh, they don't know this either," and so sometimes I forget how little we actually know
Yeah.
about the Bennett, 'cause I feel like we tend to make, like, leaps and assumptions sometimes without even realizing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I would think that would be really interesting if the Maven if there was a Maven or a few Maven, like the Triumvirate or whatever, if it's just the 3. I can't say that word for the record, I have no idea how to pronounce it. I'm sure I just butchered it.
Hierarchy.
Um, but it would be interesting if it was like they were Venom or if there's someone else there in charge that's like a Maven. That would be really fascinating. And I wonder if that would have to do with why they seem to resent love so much because
Mm.
they seem so resentful of it. They're like, "Oh, who needs that? You just need a contract." Like they they don't seem into that. And so it would be interesting to see if that would be why. 'Cause
Mm.
maybe that's how they came to be in the first place, and now they resent it.
Yeah, yeah,
So, that
and
would
they
be really
certainly
interesting.
lack feeling and empathy and things like that. We saw that a
Yeah.
lot on that island, with the exception of Xaden's mum. She seemed to still care a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
That was
it
a really sad I mean, I to be clear, like, I don't like her, but I still that whole situation with her felt sad because I just felt like she just had been like, this is how she had been raised,
yeah, and then she was
and
very manipulated. She had this whole
Mhm.
she wanted to prepare this chocolate cake for her son who'd come
Yeah.
back, and she was really and then they just completely manipulated that, as you say, almost like chaos, put poison in it. And so it
Yeah.
was almost attacking her as much for the love she had for her son in trying to poison that relationship, as well as physically poisoning the people that it did in that moment. So
Yeah.
it was really awful. It was really
It was. It just felt like she was in almost seems like a person who feels trapped. Like
mm,
she's on this island, they're all afraid of the water, she doesn't know how to get off. She's with these people. I mean, to be clear, like, I don't forgive her for just leaving her son and being like, "Well, I had no other choice." Like, "Well, you could have stayed." Like, that was
mhm.
always a choice. You could have not just left him there. But she was an interesting character to me, and I know I'm not saying I like her, but I do find her interesting.
I think there's more to the story than
I
what
do
we
think
know
there's
currently.
yeah, and I also think that it's good that, like I know it's frustrating for some people, but for me, I'm like, I don't think it's realistic that Zayden was gonna meet his mom and all of a sudden get all the answers and the closure on that
Mhm.
situation. So, I personally liked the way that was written where he still left just being like, "What the hell?" Like, "Why?" 'Cause that just felt more realistic to me. But I will say though, if it is Hedian, that if it is a god of wisdom, I should say, whatever
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
name he's going by, um, and Violet beat the people in charge, like, I wonder what that's gonna mean for Violet and the god of wisdom. Like, if she outsmarted them. So I
Yeah,
wonder what that's gonna mean for her, if that
yeah,
really is the god of wisdom, like, what that's gonna mean, that she
yeah.
outsmarted the god of wisdom's people.
Yeah, yeah, they're gonna be angry about that. That's gonna
Yeah.
be interesting. I wanna
Yeah.
jump into Malik, and
Mhm.
if you have any thoughts on Malik, because some of the biggest theories I've seen post this have been around Malik. That this at the end, obviously, there is the line about Violet and when she was only half blessed by June, and they said that she already curries the favor of another. And a lot of the theories have been that the other one that she curries the favor of is Malik.
Mhm.
Malik. But what is your thoughts on that? Do you have a take on this?
Yeah. I definitely think Malik is a contender for me. When I think of the people that are trying to curry her favor, I think it is probably either Malik or Amari.
Okay.
So, I think it's probably one like, I definitely Dune or Dune, however it's pronounced. I
Yeah.
also am, like, not positive on that one. I say Dune most of the time.
Yeah.
Um, so, but the other one, I do think it's either Malik or Amari.
Mhm.
So, that is the camp I am in at this point. I
Yeah.
think it's probably one of those 2. I I do think that Malik makes a lot of sense for things that are going on, like, 'cause she's so angry at Malik.
Mhm.
So, it would be interesting to me if he's trying to curry her favor and she's just so angry at him. Where with Amari, she's very just like, "Think Amari." She's always praising Amari
Yes.
and Queen of the Gods. And so I think both are possible, but I think Malik would be really interesting because she's so angry at him. I'm like, "How are you
Mm.
ever gonna get this girl on your side? She don't like you." Um, but
Well,
I think if she
yeah.
does manage if it is Malik, it would make sense because of what is happening to
Yeah.
Xaden. It would
Yeah,
make
well, I
sense.
think one of the I've seen some people that have shared moments and where it's sort of suggested that Malik seems to listen to her and he seems
Mhm.
to be influenced. When her sister is dying, she turns and she says, "You can't have her," and
Mhm.
the sky darkens in answer, and then she doesn't die. And so I think there's some real interesting aspects that have sort of pointed to them maybe somewhat having a relationship. But I've also heard theories that Malik is obviously the god of death. He could also be, I mean, also him potentially being the god of chaos, him having his power that is actually being used by the Venom. Whether that is with his support or against his support, that is probably another question to answer. I
Mhm.
like to think that based on other books, other fantasy novels and that we read, often the god of death, we always think of that as a bad thing, but often they are also the god of life and things like
Mhm.
that, so they can kind of go both ways. So they're always a very interesting, unique character. I would almost see Amari, I can almost see Violet having some connection, being the queen of the gods herself. Like if Rebecca ended up going on like a Jennifer Armentrout kind of pathway where she was like, guess what? You're actually a god. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that she will be a god, but I definitely think
yeah.
there is connections to these gods. I will say that I also think it would actually make a lot of sense for Rhiannon to be connected to Amari because like
Ooh.
in Fourth Wing and the very first time she sees Rhea, she says that she looks like the renderings of Amari, Queen of the Gods, and she's
Ooh.
the only character that gets described as looking like her.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would be interesting if Rhea had a connection to Amari. I'd love to see that personally because I also love Rhea, and I think Amari's kind of seems to be sort of universally liked, and
Yes.
so it would make sense to me if they were connected. Um, but yeah, I do agree. Malik, we don't have like a god of life, and so it makes me wonder if Malik is just kind of two sides of the same coin since he's the god of death. And they talk about the souls dying. And I'm like, well, does that mean they go to Malik? So does that mean Malik's just holding part of Zayden's soul?
Yeah.
Maybe she can get it back from Malik. I was like, may that seems like a really easy fix, but unless there's something he
I'm here
wants
for
that's
it.
going to be
I'm here
really
for it.
difficult. Yeah. I, I just want Zayden to have his soul back. Is that so much? That's all I want. But I do think I have wondered though if Malik is angry, like you were saying before. You're like, is he with the Venom or not with the Venom? Like, is he mad at them? Because it's like, are they keeping souls from him? Are they killing their soul and he doesn't get it? Or is he the one taking them? And we just don't know.
Yeah.
And so it's like it'll be interesting to see which side of the Venom he is on.
Yeah.
Um, if he is like pro Venom or not for Venom. Because he's also like if Malik just wants people's souls, like they are also responsible for taking a lot of people out and getting more people to Malik if that's what he wants. But maybe really that's not what he wants. Maybe he doesn't really care how many souls he gets.
Yeah, well, I
So
think it comes back to that nature likes things in balance. And I
yes.
think that Malik is still an organic part of the nature, the world.
Hmm.
And I feel like what the Venom are is not real and organic. I
Hmm.
feel like they may actually be stealing his power and using it against him. Not so I feel like there would be an anger there, and hence why he's maybe supporting Violet, because
Hmm.
she's going to be the one that goes on this quest or journey to balance things again. So yeah, I like to think that Malik's actually going to be a helpful and good character and will be against the Venom. But of course, we just gonna have to wait and see.
Yeah, I definitely think that does make a lot of sense. Like when you think about like the ongoing theme of nature likes all things in balance, that if he is on the side of wanting things in balance, that it does make sense for him to be like not with the venom because they are putting things out of balance.
Yeah.
I mean, to a certain extent, so are the writers.
Yes.
So I keep wondering, like with these writers and all their second signets, I'm like, what is that going to mean for the venom? Are they going to start getting second signets? What's going to
Oh,
happen here? How is that going to balance out? Um, so
exactly.
yeah, I've said this several times, but like I just want to see like Rebecca Yaros's board that she has of like tick marks of what is in balance and out of balance and on each side and like what the scales look like. I'm like,
Oh,
I
it's
wanna
got to be a
know.
complex like
Yeah.
workbook that she's got
Yeah.
of like the
Right.
gods, the characters, the signets, the second signets.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
Serious flow chart of just
That in itself is impressive.
yeah.
Well, also, do you have any? I guess actually, no. There's one more thing I want to talk about, and
Okay.
that is Rebecca has outlined that someone is going to die pretty much straight up in the next book. Who do you theorize that's going to be?
So when you say straight up, do you mean, like, immediately in the very beginning?
I think she suggested that we're gonna lose someone pretty quickly, like, sh I
Oh.
think she outlined that, there wasn't a lot of pain in this book, we didn't really lose major characters, and she said someone's going look, don't correct me, some in one of the recent interviews, she said someone's going kinda early, so
Mhm.
be prepared. Pain
Well,
starts immediately.
as a person who felt personally victimized by Onyx Storm, I felt like there was plenty of pain in it, so I'll just put that out there. I cried for, like, 3 days over Andarna breaking the bond, like, every time I think about it, I just start crying. I know she was back
Oh.
at the end of the book, but I just sobbed over that. So but at the oh, man, at the beginning of book 4, who do we think is gonna die? Oh, man, I don't like thinking about that.
No. Well, I
I
feel like it's hard because it's like how many dare I say, I don't think we've got enough characters to lose, and, my probably the weakest link for me right now would be Rhiannon. I feel like sort of she has knowing how Rebecca has worked so far, like when she talks about Liam and why she killed him off, she said his character really had nowhere else to grow. And most of the characters, I feel like most of them have growth opportunity, maybe only with the exception maybe of Ree, because Ree's already she's just a very well-rounded character. I mean, not to say that I don't
Mhm.
want her to go anywhere, and I feel like we've still got plenty of places we can go to. But I mean, there's just other characters. Like I cannot lose Riddick. I don't want to like. There's lots of other characters I do not. I mean, Sawyer's already had his leg taken off. I feel like he's already gone through his trauma. There aren't that many other characters available to lose. Like
Yeah, well, did she say it was gonna be a like, a major inner circle character?
I think she said it was
Like
going to be a major character. She didn't sort of
oh,
specify
boy.
anything.
Mm. If it's gonna be one of the squad, I who would we lose?
I mean,
That's
Imogen's gonna
hard.
be unless she is referring to, that it's who we're losing to the Venom, like that it could be Garrick or Bodhi or whoever's gonna be going to the
Yeah.
Venom. So there's Imogen. I would think she's too important to the story and the development. And then you've got characters like Jacinia and things like we know
Mhm.
Jacinia survives because she's detailing all the
Mhm.
after events of
Yeah.
what's occurring. So we know that she survives pretty much.
I
So
guess if yeah, if I was gonna guess who's gonna die near the beginning, I would guess maybe Mira,
Mhm.
which just because I was like, didn't think it even made sense that she survived
Yeah.
in that scene anyways, and I'm like, I could see us potentially losing Mira, but then it kind of feels like a jump scare where we almost lost her and then she dies, which would maybe feel like a little bit of whiplash. Um,
Yes, and she just started this cute romance with Drake, and it's oh not slow burn with Drake,
that's
and these
true.
lovers, and I'm like, no,
Ugh.
surely. But then I did think she was going to go when it started happening. I was like, oh my gosh, we're losing Mira. Um,
Mhm.
the other thing we haven't seen is a dragon. That
Oh,
obviously
that's true. I guess it could be a dragon, but it would have to be a dragon that's connected, I guess, without a rider, 'cause then the rider would die. I'm
yeah,
trying to think
yeah.
who that could be. I
Well,
guess
this is actually another thing is
mm,
like because one of the things that happens when Violet wakes up is Taryn is like he's needing a cycle to recover. And some
mhm.
people have said, has Segale broken the bond? Is Segale died? Not that I'm kind of like, hang on, if Segale died, I don't think he'd just be needing a cycle to recover. He'd barely survive that.
Yeah.
That would absolutely break him. And I think even breaking the bond of a dragon mates would be a huge impact for him. So yeah, I don't really
Yeah.
know enough about that.
Yeah, well, I think it's in Fourth Wing where we get an epigraph where it says, like, the bonds between mated dragons, it's like it says one cannot survive without the other. So
Yeah.
I don't even know if they could survive based on what we know. Now, mind you, what we know is from humans, not dragons, and so I don't know how much I trust that information. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not I did notice that and it is super suspicious. But I don't know if it's because Sigale broke the bond or if something else that they did during those 12 hours we just don't know about. And I'm going to guess it has something to do with those 12 hours where we just don't know everything that happened in those missing 12 hours because we know that like there's 6 eggs missing. A bunch of
Yes.
the elder dragons were killed. So much happened, and I don't it's hard for me to imagine that Taryn would, like, steal dragon eggs and kill elder
Mm.
dragons. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's that, but I do think something happened in those 12 hours that we're gonna find out probably early on in book 4 where it's probably gonna make more sense.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I do think
Yeah.
it has something to do with that.
For sure. Okay, one final thing I've also just remembered we've got to talk about
Oh,
really
yeah.
quickly. We haven't talked about him yet. Arik and his precognition,
Oh,
because
yeah.
this was my favorite. What was your take on Arik and his signet?
Oh, I loved it. I love that it developed, like, slowly and he didn't quite realize at first, and I
Yes.
love combing through the book and being like, "Did he know here? Does this
Yes.
is this the signet?" Like, I've been combing through and just being like, "When did he know? What
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this?"
What's just
Uh,
him being a prince and just having a really good education and knowing things like just knowing languages and things like that. It was just
yeah.
I loved that how, during the aisles where he would
Mhm.
just all of a sudden like Dane would be there struggling with broken speech trying to get it across. Then he would just have the most beautiful, eloquent language. He'd just start
Yeah.
talking to them fluently. And that was just really funny too.
Yeah, no, I thought Arik was fantastic in this book, start to finish. I didn't, like, have strong feelings about him in Iron Flame, and then by the end of Onyx Storm, I'm like, "I love Arik. Arik can get it. He's
Yeah.
fantastic." I am sort of secretly shipping him and Riddick.
Oh.
I love them together personally. Um,
I love it.
I just think that would be so cute. But, I loved his second signet or it's not his second signet, it's his only signet, but I loved his signet and I loved, like, the reveal of it. I was, like, figuring it out fairly early on in the book. I was like, "Oh, yeah, he definitely has precognition." Um,
Yeah.
but the moment Violet realizes she realizes how critical it is, like, the way that that was written, the reveal, I thought was so great,
Yes.
and I I just love like I said, I just love combing through it and being like, "When did he know?" Which I think he started to figure it out, like, right before Quest Squad. Like,
Okay.
I think he realized he needed to go, that he needed to be there,
Yes.
and I think that's when he figured it out personally, and he was just hiding it. So, but
Yeah.
that's where I'm at with that one.
I love Arik as a character,
Mhm.
and I think it's very interesting because he has a lot of parallels to Xaden in that he's a prince and he might be the spare, but in my opinion, he's basically next in line because Halden is useless. I also think that he also has a blue dragon. So he really is on a pretty similar level to Xaden when it comes to power, things like that. And obviously now he's got this massive important signet that puts him above Melgren. In that Melgren's signet's pretty useless. Let's be honest. He has this precognition for battles, but then half of it's broken because he often gets it wrong because as soon as the marked ones are there, it becomes inaccurate. Whereas whatever the kind of precog that Arik has, he can obviously go through different alternatives and know which one is actually going to be successful. To say, you need to stand in front of this temple with this particular dagger, and this is going to help you survive. Like, he can break it down to that level to help them survive. He's going to be pivotal to this future war and to helping them. So that's why I think Arik is in it for the long haul. I don't feel like
Mhm.
he's going anywhere because he's just too important for the book.
Oh, yeah, I definitely think he's very important. I think we'll have him at least through book 4, and I so badly want a chapter from his perspective just so we can see him use his signet because I think that would be
Yeah.
so cool to see
Yes. Oh
how
my
he
god, it'd be
experiences
amazing.
it. Yeah, that would be so that I would love to see that. I would love to see him experience a signet. I wanna see also, now that we've had an Imogen POV chapter, I just wanna beg to the Rebecca Yarros gods that we get to see her use her signet at some point. Get like, not her second one, but her memory wiping one. I wanna see
Yes.
how she knows, like, does she see the memories? When does she stop erasing the
Yeah, how does
memories?
she know what point to go to and
Yeah,
how it
can she
works?
erase her own? Like, I have so many questions about her signet, so I wanna see her use her signet so
Yeah,
bad.
and we don't know how often she's used it.
Yeah.
I think you pointed out there are a number of times where characters have headaches and things like that, and that could be a suggestion that Imogen may have actually wiped those memories. There's so much, as we've often said, it's all coming from Violet's POV. If we got more of Imogen's POV in the next book, we could be seeing a whole different, especially if she can't wipe her own memories, so she's getting everything. If she's needing to protect certain memories because, it's a danger, as you said,
Mhm.
because of truth sayers and things like that, she can't reveal. I know it could be a huge important factor.
Yeah, I definitely wanna know more, and I want much more Imogen POV chapters. That would make me so happy. I
Now, we have not spoken about Violet's second signet, which should
Oh,
be
yeah. I
extremely
kinda forgot
important.
about
I know
that.
there's so much in this book. We can be here for hours. But
I know.
so, what did you think of Dreamwalker? Do you think what is your take?
So, I have been on record being uncomfortable with her second signet being called a dreamwalker because it is a sacred practice in indigenous culture, and
Okay.
I don't love that and to be clear, this isn't the first fantasy book that has used that term. It's been used in several fantasy books. I'm not sure, that people when they're writing even know because they've probably heard it in other fantasy books and they think it's just a fantasy term. But it's something that exists in indigenous culture. So I kind of wish it had been called something else. And I know Rebecca Yarros had been like, "Oh yeah, her second signet, it's super obvious." To me, the reason why I didn't feel like it was obvious was because the whole time in Iron Flame, that felt like something that was happening to her, not something she was doing, like
Yeah.
actively doing. It felt like something that was happening to her. And but that being said, I do think it'll be really important for book 4 and 5 if her and Xaden are gonna be separated for long periods of time because I
Yes.
think
How
it's
they're
gonna
going
be
to
the only.
connect.
Yeah, it's gonna be the only way they can communicate.
Hmm.
So, I do think that was an important setup for book 4 and 5, which makes sense. So that'll be really interesting, and I was at, the Denver event, and Rebecca Yarr said that we'd only seen, like, 10% of her signet, of her ability.
Second signet.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm not at all convinced that that's even it. I feel like that when that happened, Xaden just jumped to that conclusion. He was like, "Oh,
Mhm,
wait, that was my dream you were in. Oh, obviously you're a dream walker." He didn't pay attention to the fact. I don't know about you. I mean, I've obviously been super convinced about her being a truth sayer. Like, what
mhm,
was your theory? And I was like reading the initial chapters, and I felt like there was a lot of instances where she was able to will things into existence, will things to
mhm,
happen. So I was thinking her signet was going to be around that. Like, for example, when she was on the Isle of June, she all of a sudden lightning started striking when
mhm,
she was on a non-magical island. So it seemed
mhm,
like when she needed something to happen, it would happen. So I'm still of the belief that there could be a whole lot more, and that could be she could be dreamwalking because she needs to walk because she
mhm.
wants to dreamwalk, therefore she is, but she might be able to do a whole lot more than just that. But I don't know. Have you
I definitely
what's your
think that's very possible. Like, there has to be more to her signet, right? Because Rebecca Yarros said we've only seen 10% of it. So I think that's very possible that that is part of it, that we're gonna see that that is part of the signet somehow, um, that it's so much bigger than we know. I think it's also possible, though, that a lot of those things, because like, I picked up on all these weird details in Iron Flame, I know we've talked about it, where I'm like, she seems to be, like, getting people to do what she needs them to do. This doesn't really how is she getting all these people to do what she needs them to do? It didn't really make sense to me, especially some of the people, like Sloane and Imogen, who I'm like, they're not people who just are gonna do what you say the second you ask them to.
no,
Um, so it didn't really make sense to me, but I am wondering if that aspect of it though is actually tied to the gods, like her being touched by a god. So
yeah,
I'm leaning towards that a little bit more personally.
yes,
But I do agree though that her second signet has to be way more than what we realize and know, because if that's 10% of it, of her going into like what we've seen so far is her being able to go into other people's dreams and sort of control them a little bit to an extent, and that's just like 1/10 of it, you're right. There has to be way, way more. So
yeah,
you could
yeah.
definitely be right. on that is part of it.
Yeah, yeah. And have you let go of that truth sayer theory now, or are you still holding on to some of that and going, "Oh no, it still might head that way"?
So I had done this, like, I don't know, 20 plus minute breakdown of, like, all the weird stuff I saw her doing. I'm like, "This is all weird." And I had said previously, I was like, "Well, in some mythology, you might call her a truth sayer, and that's something that existed in this world, so that's what I was calling it." But I was like, "But in other mythology, you would actually call it a soothsayer."
Mhm.
And so it would be interesting to me if she did develop more into a soothsayer-like ability, and that's they just call it dream walking in this world. Um, or maybe they'll actually call it something different down the line. They'll be like, "Oh, this is more than that. This is actually
Yeah,
this."
yeah,
Or they
yeah.
won't even have a word for it. They'll have to, like, make up something because they don't know what
Yeah,
she
it may
is.
never existed before.
Yeah, so that would not surprise me, but a soothsayer would fit in with a lot of that stuff, like we had talked about previously, because a lot of that stuff
Yeah.
exists in that mythology of being able to do things like that, including getting people to do what you want them to do. So
Mhm.
it it would not surprise me at all.
Yeah.
But I
No.
think it's probably gonna be one or the other.
We're just gonna have to wait and see. We've just gotta
Yeah.
wait for the 4th book to get any more. I
Ugh.
feel like I've broken it down as much as I reasonably can, and then I was like, "Okay, I have to leave it now." And as I was saying to Carly, I've just gone and started reading Zodiac Academy, and I've just
Oh, yeah.
gotten absolutely obsessed. I need it, you're in a book depression and you just
Mhm.
need a fantasy series to just whisk you away and help
Yeah.
you to recover.
I totally understand. This book left me with such a hangover, and I think I read 2 or 3 sports rom-coms afterwards because that seems to be my go-to, like, palate cleanser when I'm in a
Yes.
book hangover. It did help. It did not solve the hangover, but it did help.
Exactly. I know you've got such an epic build up, and then it's just like I always have anxiety for the day we actually get the reveal of when the next Akatar book is going to come out, because I have never been so just anticipating and
Mhm.
desperately needing this next piece of this
Yeah.
puzzle, and almost to the point now that I've been waiting for so long, I'm actually going to be overwhelmed when we actually finally get a date. I'll like in not in a good way. I want to be excited, but I actually just think I'm going to be overwhelmed. I'll probably just start crying and being like, I don't know why I'm crying. I'm just overwhelmed that we're actually going to get this.
Yeah, that's what Bookstagram is here for, though, so we can support you when you don't know how to feel about a book.
Exactly, exactly. So did you come away, did you give a rating to Onyx Storm, or what was sort of your overall review of the book?
Yeah, so I'm not a huge fan of a star rating
Mhm,
system. I don't love it. It doesn't, I feel like, really fully encapture how I feel about books. But I mean, for me, it's basically, I loved it like I loved the other books.
mhm.
And, so, if you were going to put on a star rating, I'd say it's a 5-star rating for me. And I definitely will say that I loved it more on the reread. So if you're not sure how you feel about the book, definitely reread it because it didn't feel as overwhelming on the second read. I
So
really
you can
felt,
break it down.
yeah, I felt much more in it. And again, I think not trying to read it in 2 days was probably a big part of that. So don't do what I
Yeah,
did. Learn from my mistakes. If I
yeah,
could
yeah.
warn
Try
anybody
and
away
enjoy
from
it.
that.
Yeah, yeah. I know I was somewhere between desperately trying to read it and then also trying to just be present and enjoy
Mhm.
it, and trying to just enjoy
Yeah.
it, but also just being unable to stop. But I've always think
Yeah.
that tells me a lot about a book. And I think even when I went and re-picked up Iron Flame, and I hadn't read them for, 6, 9 months. And then as soon as I started reading it, just getting pulled into the world, I was like, wow, this is why we love Rebecca Yarros. There's just something about the way that she writes books that just
Mhm.
pulls you in, and everything else disappears and all you can do. And honestly, I don't care if they're just sitting around a table talking. I just love being with these characters. I feel like it's a little bit like Harry Potter and trying to rate the different books in the series. They are
Mhm.
all part of one big series, and some books you love more than others. You'll have
Mhm.
your favorites and maybe ones that you're a bit like, oh, it was still an important part of the whole series, but might not have been your absolute favorite of the series, but so important for where the books end up going. So I feel, and I've always said, I mean, Fourth Wing has always been like, I have a 6-star category, and again, I've always put it in the 6-star category. So,
Oh, yeah.
but I feel like you have to just kind of put them all together. And I think once we get the whole story, the whole 5 books, it's all
Mhm.
gonna make so much sense. So,
I love that
um,
you have a 6-star rating. That's
I
that's
say that
fantastic.
only for my, the Akatars and the
Mhm.
Fourth Wings, those books that you can't put down and you read
Mhm.
them again and again and again. And
Yeah.
like I try not to hand it out. Like I'll just say it's a 5-star book.
Mhm.
Very rarely. It has to be just those ones that are just transcend time
Mhm.
kind of books.
Yeah. Is Onyx Storm a 6-star read for you or a 5-star read?
Look, for me, it's more of a 4 to 5 star. Like
Gotcha.
I think I probably enjoyed. Look, I loved Fourth Wing the most.
Mhm.
That one, I think I read like 6 or 7 times. I just
Yeah.
devoured it. I couldn't get enough. Then Iron Flame, I loved it. Like it
Mhm.
was shocking and everything, but in so many good ways. It really took it to the next level when it came to theorizing and the
Mhm.
Easter eggs we got left and the expansion of the world. This book had a slightly different shift. It kind of, as I say, it was a bit of a shorter time frame. A lot happened, a lot jumped around. I think it will all make sense. For me, it probably did dip a little bit compared to the other ones, but not to say that it was bad. It was still an amazing book, an
Mhm.
amazing read, and I think it will all make sense as we kind of see where we're going with the next book. So as I say, it's
Mhm.
more akin to, as I say, Harry Potter, and that all the books are different and unique while all being part of this whole story that we're going to get.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I it's like I feel I have a hard time separating out, like, distinct feelings from one without thinking about the other, so it's hard to kind of rate
Exactly.
them individually. But yeah, I feel like for me, Iron Flame is probably my favorite in the series, which is not, I feel like, a popular opinion, but I love Iron Flame so much. I love that book so much. I love all the books, but Iron Flame is the one I've read the most.
Yeah, yeah. I think especially when you're a theorizer, so much happens in that you can break down
Yeah.
and say that expansion of the world is just huge. Fourth Wing was just that shock of just this world we got thrown into and
Mhm.
how exciting it was. And it was adventure from beginning to end. And then you had the romance and the enemies to lovers, and so much happened in that book that was so enjoyable. Iron Flame then expanded that and
Yeah.
that. So it was, but didn't have the opportunity to introduce us to things like Fourth Wing had. But it
Mhm.
was so good. It was, as I said, on
Yeah.
my last read, I really did come away going, wow, that is actually an amazing book. And I'll probably feel the same way about Onyx Storm. I'll probably go back, especially when we have the next book and
Mhm.
pieces click together.
Yeah.
We'll probably go, oh wow, now I can see how this is all clicking and it makes so much sense now. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Agreed.
trust the method, trust Rebecca. And I'm always just so thankful that she has given us these books, and I'm so excited for what comes next.
Yeah, I'm so thankful she's still writing because I know Fourth Wing blew up in a way she wasn't expecting and the attention she got and how stressful it's been for her. She's, like, reiterated that in several interviews, that it's just been so overwhelming. So I'm just glad that she is, taking a break if she needs it and finding the creative energy to continue writing because I just love these books so much and I just want more. I want the remainder of the series and the spin-off
Right, please
series and the
hurry, stop now.
prequels.
It's like, have a holiday, take a break. Yeah, just
Yeah.
tap away little bit by little bit. Doesn't need to rush, but just at some point, that'd be great.
Mhm.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
amazing. Well, thank you so much, Carly, for
Yeah.
joining us today. We've loved having you. Thank you so much for coming back and,
Yeah.
rehashing over those previous theories we had and sharing the new ones. Hopefully, we'll continue to have you back as we get more books in the future. But so thanks so much. And thanks, everyone, for joining us. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.